Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Amy Smith. Let's make some cards. Today we'll be making two cards that feature a mini quilt style. I can't sew very well, which is so sad because I love quilts, but one day I realized I could make little quilts on cards. So I came up with this style using a die that is a little unconventional, and I'll show you why a little later. To start, we are going to take 4 A2 card panels in 4 colors. I have Buttercup, Sorbet, Honeysuckle, and Aqua Sky from Concord and Ninth. And I am going to ink up my some of my favorite background stamps to create a fabric pattern look. So you do want to make sure the fabric patterns are tinier for this technique. And I am going to just stamp on this Buttercup cardstock, just Buttercup ink for a tone on tone. I am not looking for this image to be perfect. I love that it has a fabric-like imperfection to it. So I'm going to leave it as is. I don't need it perfect. When you are pulling away a stick and stamp mat, remember to pull the stick and stamp mat away from the paper and not the paper from the stick and stamp mat. That helps your paper to not curl. I'm going to use this same stamp. This is a Simon Hurley pinstripe stamp set from Ranger. I didn't use this cool feature, but each of those stripes are removable and you can create different patterns with them. It's really cool. So next I'm going to use Aqua Sky, and I'm going to change the orientation. These stripes will appear horizontal on the card. And again, I'm just using a tone-on-tone stamping. If I haven't mentioned it before, I am a huge Concord and Ninth ink fan. I'm super excited for April 10th to get here. That is when they are releasing all their new colors. I have seen all their new colors. I attended a class this past weekend, and they are phenomenal. My next video will feature some of those colors. I am so excited to share them with you. So again, the quilting technique is very forgiving with imperfect stamping. I'm not looking for an exact image transfer here. So pretty. Aqua Sky is one of my favorite colors, and if it hasn't been a surprise for you yet, this color combo is one of my favorites. Okay, so here is Honeysuckle, and with Honeysuckle I'm going to be stamping with white pigment ink from Hero Arts. It's Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment ink. And this background stamp is from the Stamp Market, and it is actually on sale in their clearance section right now. This is one of my very favorite background stamps. I love the tiny flowers, and it's beautiful. Now, when I stamp with white, I usually have to stamp multiple times, which you will see here. And also because I'm using pigment ink, I'm going to need to dry it with my heat gun after. I do that so I don't smudge it when I move it around. I'm pretty sure I end up stamping it 4 times here. I probably could have even done a 5th. But I really like that faded fabric look. With background stamps especially, I find a pressure tool for stamping to be really useful, and I use the Stampendable pressure tool by Spellbinders. I really enjoy this. I find it comfortable for my hand, and I highly recommend it. Yes, just lovely. Look at all those tiny details. Again, I am bending the stick and stamp mat so that it pops the paper off. Of course, I took it off camera, but okay, so here are the 4 panels. I must have not recorded the Sorbet panel. I did stamp with Honeysuckle on top of that. And what I'm showing you here is a die from the stamp market, and this die is meant to cut up a stamp that does the alphabet. But instead, I used it to cut out a whole bunch of uniform rectangles. Now, to do this technique, you don't actually need this die. You can just cut out with your paper trimmer a whole bunch of strips and then chop each strip into the same size mini rectangles. When I saw this die, I realized that it had that versatility for my quilting cards, and it just is a time saver for me. But it is not necessary. I do love the alphabet that it also cuts. It's pretty fabulous, and I'll use those in the traditional way in a future video. So here I am getting ready to piece my quilt together, and I'm just taking a very thin sheet of cardstock and adding double-sided adhesive from Altenew on there. And I do this because it's just easier to line up the pieces and so that they don't slide around as I move them. There is still some wiggle room, but I'm going to show you just the first row here, and you can create whatever pattern you like. But I'm just lining it up at the edge, and then I will place them as I go. Now, it would have been smarter for me to keep some of that adhesive paper that I peeled off on there so my fingers don't get stuck on there, but I'm able to manage, no problem. You can come up with whatever pattern you have in mind. I did not do a true repeating pattern here. I tried to do diagonals, and you'll see in the design in just a second. I won't show me putting all of these pieces on. It didn't take too long, maybe 5 minutes. And this technique is really forgiving. You don't need it to look perfect. It adds to that quaint quilt look. Okay, so here is the majority of the quilt pieces now on the adhesive sheet. I'm going to add one more row and column to finish this out. And you can see kind of that diagonal pattern I was creating. once I have the remaining pieces down, I'm going to go ahead and use a die cut to cut this out. You can make 4 panels with what you have. So yeah, save those other pieces. I'm just going to show the one card here today. I use my press tool to make sure that adhesive is has great contact. And I'm going to use this quilt frame die from Fawn. You can see I etched LF on there with an etching pen. I did that so I know what sets my dies go to. And I'm going to die cut it, and it's going to cut off a frame with the scallop, and it's going to leave a rectangle with no detail on the inside. And I'm actually going to save the scalloped frame for a second card. And I'm going to cut out of the Honeysuckle cardstock and a piece of white cardstock so I can get the thickness correct, a coordinating scalloped trim edge. For the second card, I'm going to run that center of the hollyhock cardstock through this Spellbinder Hearts embossing folder, and that's going to go in card number 2. We're just going to set it to the side. You can see the direction I'm going with these 2 cards. I noticed there was a little bit too much water in one corner, and when that happens, I just take my heat gun and zap it away. Okay, let's get to putting this first card together. So I'm just taking some Gina K Connect glue, and I am adding it to the top of the white frame. And I love this glue. I would say that my 2 favorite glues so far are Art Glitter Glue and Gina K glue, with Gina K being my #1 glue. I have a lot of glues that I've received in kits or that I've purchased before I discovered my love of card making, and I'm trying to use up what I have so that I don't waste the money I spent. Okay, I'm checking the fit here. It's a hair off, and I think that's just because of the thickness of the one paper, but that's okay. Nobody's going to notice. Have fun, and if perfectionism takes away the fun, then don't worry about perfection. So I'm taping this on the back, and I'm doing that right now so that when I tape this to the card, or glue this to the card rather, it will stay together. I'm using a Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110 pound card base for both cards. For this card, you will see that the white will show underneath, and I don't want that in this card because I don't have any white details that are going to be on the front of the card. Anytime there's white or there's black, I try to make sure that there's something else on the card that is white or black, just to tie things together. Doesn't always happen that way, but I do try. And so since I know that my front of my card will have no white, I'm going to go ahead and trim down the card base by about 1/4 inch from the bottom and on one of the sides. And that should get it to fit my quilt on top without showing any of the white card base. This is my Tim Holtz Comfort Grip trimmer, and highly recommend this trimmer. I did not love it at first, but I did not realize that you really should hold your paper on by that clear plastic guard and not pushing down the paper itself. I was holding up before with my hand on the paper and not the hand on the guard, and I would get these wonky cuts that just really bugged me. But once I learned that trick, I have become a huge fan of the trimmer. I saw his new trimmer that he released this week, and man, that would be lovely to have. Okay, adding some of that Gina K glue and just centering my quilt panel. Now I know it doesn't look like much for the scallop trim edge frame to fit or to be glued onto that piece, but I tell you, this glue is so strong and it holds this piece fantastic. It is definitely sturdy. You don't need much glue for sure. And I decided to add glue to the back of the frame just to make sure that every inch of it had some adhesive, just because it will be hanging over the edge, and so I wanted to make sure the part that was touching the paper was for sure adhered. I see a little bit is popping up, and that's one of the great things about these fine tip bottles is that you can stick it into these little pockets that sometimes you find when you're gluing things down, and you can fit it in there and get in some glue, and it just fixes the problem perfectly. Oh my goodness, I totally love this card. Not only is it my favorite color palette, but it's a mini quilt, totally adorable. Okay, so now I'm going to glue it to that trimmed down card panel. I mean the card base. Making sure that the white isn't showing anywhere. Perfect. Making sure that I have no lift in any spots. And I'll put an acrylic block on top. This is just an old block from close to my heart from back in my scrapbooking days. Here is what will become a baby quilt card, and we'll work on that after I finish this one. And this is going to be a thank you card for a friend. And I'm going to use another die set here. I love mixing and matching die sets. This one is Concord and Ninth. So lovely. It is one of my favorite sets that I own. And I'm going to use these dies to cut out some pieces. Now I've already cut some out, and I'll just show you what I used as I go along. So I use this die to cut this square piece of paper out. I did use a pair of scissors to trim off that little decorative pinking sheer edge. I felt that the pinking sheer edge was too much with the scalloped edge of the quilt. And so I just trimmed it off. Adds more flexibility to the dies you have. It's okay to do that. Yeah, so we are going to then put this little, I love this little heart. We're going to put this little heart that is supposed to look like thread in the shape of a heart. We'll also put that on this Sorbet piece of cardstock. And I cut that out of the Honeysuckle. Super cute. And I only cut out one layer. I did not stack this one. And then I cut out some buttons using button dies from this die set as well. And I cut 2 of each, and I will glue them and stack them up for a little bit more dimension. I'm playing around with the design here. I don't show this, but you can see it in the end of the image, I believe. But I do at the end add some diamond glaze to the buttons to make them look shiny and a little bit thicker. It's a super cute detail. And I cut this super cute pin out of some holographic cardstock, and I cut them 2 deep, or 2 of them, so that I could stack them 2 deep and add some dimension. And this cute pin is going to go through the 2 slots at the top of the Sorbet cardstock square there. So it looks like you've pinned your fabric to the quilt. Super cute. It's pretty easy to line up. Okay, I'll speed up this part here where I'm just gluing things together, and then I'll meet you after. Okay, so now I've glued on the heart thread piece, and I just used the needle side of my pickup tool to create a little gap where those dashes are, and I'm inserting the pin here. I do it from this way, but I do fix it and turn it the other way later. And I'm now just gluing also the buttons. This is just so adorable. A little goes a long way with Gina K's Connect glue. I love how strong it holds. Okay, just putting on the acrylic block. And here is the So Lovely stamp set from Concord and 9th. And we're going to use the You're So Lovely sentiment here, and we're going to stamp that on the inside of this card. Now, remember, you don't always have to put a sentiment on the front of your card. It is not necessary. Sometimes I feel like the art on the card is just cute enough on its own. Go ahead and put the sentiment on the inside. It isn't always necessary. If you feel like you're not really great with sentiment placement, put it on the inside. Do what makes you happy and makes this craft enjoyable for you. I'm using 3M foam tape here. You can buy it at the craft stores, but you can also find this at your local home improvement store. I'm doing this to add just a little bit of dimension to the front of the card. I'm going to offset it a little bit. I love how that looks. I think it brings a little attention to it since everything has so many horizontal and vertical edges to it. And here I am. I'm not happy with that pin going in the direction it was, and I tried to put it in here. It wasn't working, so I gave up and I put it back, and then I ended up fixing it later. The silly things that bother us when we're crafting. It's ridiculous. Okay, so let's get to stamping. We'll go ahead and stamp, and this card is a little bit more difficult to line up in my Misty. I should have taped it down securely, which since I didn't, it did lead to me only being able to stamp my sentiment one time. I think the sentiment looks great, but as a tip for you when you are doing your cards, I would make sure to place the card and tape it down so that you could double stamp if you needed to. I wasn't too worried. If I made a mistake, I could stamp on a separate piece of paper and glue over it. But this is a step I forgot to do, and I thought I would just clarify. One thing with photopolymer stamps that are different from rubber stamps is that it actually takes longer for the ink to transfer from a photopolymer stamp than a rubber stamp. And so you should leave the photopolymer stamp in contact with the paper for a few seconds after you've pushed on it before you pull it away. And that can actually help you get a clearer image when you stamp with photopolymer. Okay, so here we are with the second card, and this is going to be a baby gift card that I'll be giving to a friend, and this is using Tailored Expressions Onesie Funsies. I absolutely love this stamp and die set, so cute. And I'm thinking and playing around here, I end up cutting out a second color onesie, and I'm using these white onesies that I had pre-cut earlier to add dimension behind my the colored cardstock. So I'm just playing around, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut one out in the Aqua Sky color. And I'm playing around with the sentiments that I want to use. And the two that I chose are Team No Sleep and The Snuggle is Real. This would be a great card for twins or just a single baby, but so cute. Now that I've found my layout and my color scheme, I'm going to go ahead and emboss on these onesies in my Misty. And I'm going to use the Brutus Monroe Alabaster Powder. I have recently discovered his embossing powder line, and I am really happy with it. I have much better results than budget powders I have purchased off of Amazon in the past. So highly recommend investing in good embossing powders. I'm just lining these up. I'm going to go ahead, get these stamps onto the Misty lid. And I'm going to use the Versamark embossing ink to ink them up, and then I plan on using white powder. And when you use white powder, you can use white pigment ink to in place of embossing ink, and you'll be able to pour the embossing powder onto the white ink that you have stamped, and it will adhere, and you'll be able to use your heat gun. And it gives a cleaner look, I think, to white embossed images. I'll pour some of the embossing powder. I don't need too much. I did forget to use my anti-static tool this time, so I will have to blow off or use a brush to get some of the little stray powder flecks away. It makes me laugh. I guess I sometimes get nervous still and I forget little things because I'm so excited to share with you guys my love of card making. Just a little funny. I'm flicking off, you can't see it, but I am flicking off the excess powder and getting some of it off with a brush. And I'm now going to use my reverse tweezers to hold the piece so I don't burn my fingers. And I'll use my embossing gun to go ahead and melt the embossing powder. I do like to wipe down my surface of any excess powder first. That way I don't accidentally melt some powder on my surface. Embossing powder is one of those things that are truly magic in the craft room. Okay, that one is done. Now you're going to see a little ink splotch on my blue onesie there. I guess there had been some ink on my tweezers. It's not a problem. I will hide it when I place my yellow onesie on the top. So I'm just being real careful not to burn my fingers here. And I am just melting the powder on the yellow onesie. Sorry for taking it off screen. Sometimes I get so caught up in the moment I forget that I'm even filming. Okay, so we're just going to add the Gina K Connect glue. I usually glue on top of the bottom layer just to make it easier for me to remember. And I'm just checking here to make sure how many layers that I want underneath the onesies. And if I want a layer underneath the blue onesie, I decide to add a layer under the blue onesie as well. And by the way, thank you so much for all the support in my last two videos, my first two videos. And thanks for being here with us today on a longer video. I do try to keep the videos under 30 minutes, but I loved that in this video you were getting 2 cards for 1. I wanted to show you how versatile quilt cards can be. And yeah. So thanks for being here. So I'm adding that second layer to the blue onesie as well. And I'm going to also add a third layer to the yellow onesie, but I am going to cut off a part where it overlaps on the blue onesie so that it doesn't create a weird bend in the yellow onesie where it overlaps. And you'll see that in just a minute. Amount of Gina K Connect glue again to the back of this onesie, making sure to cover up that little ink splotch on the blue onesie. And there you go. Oh my gosh, this is adorable. I am going to add some bling in the form of some confetti sequins from This Calls for Confetti. Yeah, I'll glue those on in just a second here, and the card will be complete. Again, I don't have a major sentiment like congrats or anything on this card. I will just add it in my personal message to my friend on the inside. When I place confetti sequins, by the way, I try to place them in groups of 3, with each of them having a different size if possible. It isn't always possible. I noticed that I had 1 or 2 of the same size on this side, so I just switched it out for a larger one. I feel like it just adds a little bit more balance to the embellishment. So cute. Look at that. With the shine from the sequins and a little bit of shine from the embossing. This makes the perfect card for any new parent. And here are the 2 cards we made today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video and subscribe so that I can continue to make more wonderful videos. I hope you have a lovely day, and thanks for watching.